Dr. Lisa Park pressed her face against the viewport as the transport ship approached Kepler Station. The massive structure hung in space like a giant wheel, spinning slowly against the backdrop of distant stars. She had dreamed of this moment for years, but now that it was happening, her stomach felt tight with worry. Captain Jake Morrison sat beside her, checking his tablet for the 100th time. His military uniform was perfect as always, but Lisa could see the tension in his shoulders. They were the first humans ever invited to join the Galactic Council's Scientific Advisory Committee, and everyone back on Earth was counting on them. "Remember what Ambassador Collins told us," Jake said quietly. "Listen more than we talk. Learn their ways before we try to change anything." Lisa nodded, but kept looking out at the station. Ships from dozens of different worlds were docked there, each one strange and beautiful in its own way. She spotted the sleek silver vessels of the Zentari Empire and the crystal-like ships of the Ethereal Collective. After years of studying alien cultures from afar, she was finally going to meet them face to face. The docking process took 30 minutes. When the airlock finally opened, they were greeted by a tall, blue-skinned alien with 4 arms and golden eyes. His translator device made his voice sound flat and mechanical. "Welcome to Kepler Station," he said. "I am Administrator Kellenox. Please follow me to the briefing chamber." The corridors of the station were wider than anything on Earth, designed to accommodate species of different sizes and shapes. Lisa saw creatures that looked like walking trees, others that resembled giant butterflies, and some that were just floating balls of light. Each one stopped to stare at the humans as they passed. The briefing chamber was enormous, with seats arranged in a circle around a central holographic display. Already waiting were the 2 beings Lisa had studied most carefully back on Earth. Ambassador Vextar of the Zentari Empire was reptilian in appearance, with scales that shifted color as he moved. Counselor Mira Lynn of the Ethereal Collective looked almost human except for her pale white skin and completely black eyes. "Ah, the representatives from the Deathworld," Vextar said, his translator giving his words a slight hiss. "How fascinating that your species managed to evolve at all." Lisa felt Jake tense beside her, but she kept her expression neutral. "Thank you for having us," she said. "We're eager to learn about the galactic community." Marilyn gestured to 2 empty seats. "Please sit. We have much to discuss about the classification system that governs our galaxy." The holographic display came to life, showing a 3-dimensional map of the local galactic arm. Thousands of star systems were marked with different colored symbols. Green meant safe and habitable worlds. Yellow indicated challenging but manageable environments. Red symbols marked what the aliens called Deathworlds. "Your Earth," Vextar explained, pointing to a red dot, "is classified as a Class 9 Deathworld, the most dangerous category we have. The fact that intelligent life evolved there is considered impossible by most of our scientists." Administrator Kellenox manipulated the display to show detailed information about Earth. Lisa read the data with growing confusion. The gravity was listed as crushing, the atmosphere as toxic, and the surface conditions as extremely hostile. "I'm sorry," Lisa interrupted, "but some of this information seems incorrect. Earth's gravity is only slightly higher than galactic standard, and our atmosphere supports billions of life forms." The 3 aliens exchanged glances. Mira Lynn's black eyes seemed to grow even darker. "Your species has adapted to conditions that would kill most galactic citizens within hours," she said. "Your world experiences violent weather patterns, seismic activity, and radiation levels that make it uninhabitable for civilized species." Jake leaned forward. "What about other Deathworlds? Are they all as dangerous as you claim Earth to be?" Vextar's scales shifted to a deeper shade of green. "Deathworlds are quarantine zones, Captain Morrison. They are monitored from a safe distance, but never approached. The risk is simply too great. The presentation continued for 2 hours. Lisa took careful notes as they showed dozens of red-marked systems, each labeled as too dangerous for exploration or colonization. The aliens spoke of toxic atmospheres, extreme temperatures, and hostile native life forms that made these worlds impossible to inhabit. But something felt wrong to Lisa. The data didn't match what she knew about planetary formation and evolution. Many of the so-called Deathworlds had atmospheric compositions that should support life, not prevent it. The temperature ranges were well within the parameters for liquid water. Even the gravity measurements seemed normal for planets of their size. When the briefing ended, Jake and Lisa were shown to their quarters in the human section of the station. The rooms were comfortable, but clearly designed by beings who didn't fully understand human needs. The beds were too hard, the lighting too blue, and the temperature controls didn't seem to work properly. Did you notice anything strange about that presentation? Lisa asked as soon as they were alone. Jake nodded grimly. The way they reacted when I asked about other Deathworlds. Vextar's scales changed color, and Miralin's eyes went completely black. In my experience, that usually means someone's lying. Lisa pulled out her tablet and began reviewing her notes. The atmospheric data doesn't make sense, she said. Half of these Deathworlds have oxygen-nitrogen atmospheres similar to Earth. The gravity readings are all within normal ranges. Either their instruments are badly calibrated, or they're not telling us the truth, Jake finished. Over the next few days, Lisa and Jake attended more briefings and meetings. They learned about galactic trade routes, diplomatic protocols, and the complex web of alliances that held the galactic community together. But every time the subject of Deathworlds came up, the alien representatives became evasive and uncomfortable. Lisa noticed that certain star systems were mentioned in hushed tones, as if they were sacred or forbidden. When she asked direct questions about specific Deathworlds, the answers were always vague and unhelpful. The aliens claimed that detailed surveys were impossible due to the extreme danger, but they somehow had enough information to classify these worlds as uninhabitable. Jake used his military training to observe the body language and behavior of their alien hosts. He noticed that whenever Deathworld locations were displayed on star charts, several of the council members would exchange meaningful glances. They seemed nervous rather than dismissive, as if they were guarding a secret rather than simply avoiding dangerous territory. On their 5th day at the station, Lisa made a discovery that changed everything. While reviewing public scientific databases, she found survey reports from several Deathworlds that contradicted everything they had been told. The reports were old and buried deep in the archives, but they painted a very different picture of these supposedly uninhabitable worlds. According to the buried reports, many Deathworlds contained vast mineral deposits, unique energy sources, and strategic locations along major hyperspace routes. The planets were not only habitable, but potentially very valuable to any species that could claim them. Lisa showed the reports to Jake, who immediately understood the implications. "They're lying to us," he said quietly. "The question is why." That night, as they sat in their quarters planning their next move, both humans realized they had stumbled onto something much bigger than a simple classification error. The Galactic Council's Deathworld system wasn't about protecting species from dangerous planets. It was about protecting something else entirely. Lisa looked out at the stars through their small viewport. Somewhere out there were worlds that could change the balance of power in the galaxy. And for some reason, the established alien civilizations wanted to keep them secret from newcomers. Like humanity, the discovery phase of their mission was complete. Now the real work would begin. Lisa Park couldn't sleep. For 3 nights straight, she had been lying in her narrow station bunk, staring at the ceiling and thinking about those buried survey reports. The numbers didn't lie, but everyone around her seemed to be doing exactly that. Jake Morrison was having the same problem. He found Lisa in the station's observation lounge at 0300 hours, nursing a cup of something that barely passed for coffee. The lounge was empty, except for a floating jellyfish-like creature that seemed to be meditating near the far wall. "We need to get into their restricted databases," Lisa whispered. "The public archives only have fragments. The real information has to be classified." Jake looked around to make sure they weren't being overheard. That would be a direct violation of our diplomatic status. If we get caught, Earth loses its seat on the Council before we even get started. And if we don't investigate, we might be sitting here for years while they feed us lies, Lisa replied. "Jake, those survey reports I found were from 60 years. Go, 60 years. They've been classifying habitable worlds as Deathworlds for longer than humans have had spaceflight." The floating creature drifted closer to their table. Its translator crackled to life with a voice like wind chimes. "Forgive the interruption, but are you discussing the classification protocols? I am researcher Velahan of the Novian Federation." Lisa and Jake exchanged glances. The Novian Federation was one of the newer members of the Galactic community, having joined only 20 years earlier. Their representative wasn't part of the inner circle that ran the Council. "We're just trying to understand how the system works," Jake said carefully. Velahan's body pulsed with soft blue light. "Understanding is exactly what they do not want from younger species. My people have questioned the Deathworld classifications for years, but our concerns are always dismissed." Lisa leaned forward. "What kind of concerns?" "The Kandari system, for example, classified as a Class 7 Deathworld due to extreme atmospheric pressure and toxic surface conditions. But our long-range sensors show it has 3 planets with perfect atmospheric composition for most galactic species. The pressure readings in the official reports are 10 times higher than what we measure." Jake felt his pulse quicken. "Have you shared this information with the Council?" Velahan's light dimmed to almost nothing. "Twice. Both times, Administrator Kellenox explained that our equipment must be faulty. He suggested we trust the wisdom of the established species rather than our own instruments." After Velahan drifted away, Lisa and Jake sat in silence for several minutes. Finally, Jake pulled out his military access codes. As a representative of Earth's government, he had been given clearance to certain secure databases for diplomatic research purposes. "We're going to do this," he said, "but we need to be smart about it. If there's a conspiracy here, they'll be watching for people who ask too many questions." They returned to Jake's quarters, which had better security than Lisa's. Jake activated his secure terminal and began the careful process of accessing restricted information without triggering any monitoring systems. His military training had included courses on intelligence gathering, and he used every trick he had learned. The first breakthrough came when Lisa discovered that the Galactic database system had layers of classification. Public information was available to everyone, but there were at least 4 higher levels that required special authorization. Jake's diplomatic codes gave them access to Level 2, which was supposed to contain detailed scientific surveys for Council members. What they found there changed everything. The Level 2 files contained the real survey data for dozens of Deathworlds. Planet after planet showed atmospheric readings that would support life, gravity within normal parameters, and surface conditions that ranged from pleasant to mildly challenging. More importantly, the geological surveys revealed incredible wealth. Vega 7 system, classified as uninhabitable due to lethal radiation levels, actually contained the largest known deposits of trilithium crystals in the galaxy. These crystals were essential for faster-than-light communication systems, making them more valuable than gold or platinum. The Rigel Deeps, supposedly too dangerous to approach because of gravitational anomalies, sat at the intersection of three major hyperspace lanes. Any species that controlled that system would have a massive advantage in interstellar trade and military positioning. System after system told the same story. Each death world contained something valuable: rare minerals, energy sources, strategic locations, or unique biological resources. None of them were actually uninhabitable. "They're not just lying," Lisa whispered as she scrolled through the data. "They're systematically stealing resources from every new species that joins the galactic community." Jake was working on a different angle. He had accessed the Council's internal communication archives and was tracking the flow of information about Deathworld classifications. What he found made his blood run cold. The established alien civilizations had been secretly mining these worlds for decades. Centauri Empire ships made regular trips to supposed Deathworlds, returning with cargo holds full of rare materials. The Ethereal Collective had built hidden research stations on planets that were officially too dangerous to approach. Even more disturbing were the communications about Earth itself. The Council had known about humanity for 50 years before making first contact. They had been monitoring human development while debating whether to classify Earth as a death world to prevent other species from recognizing its strategic value. "Look at this," Jake said, pointing to a message thread between Ambassador Vextar and Counselor Marilyn. "They're discussing Earth's quantum crystalline formations. Our entire planet is sitting on top of materials that could revolutionize galactic communications." Lisa felt sick. That's why they were so surprised that intelligent life evolved on Earth. They weren't amazed by human adaptability. They were shocked that someone was already living on a world they wanted to exploit. The investigation continued through the night. Jake used his security clearance to access shipping manifests, trade records, and resource allocation databases. The pattern became clearer with each document they uncovered. The Galactic Council wasn't a cooperative organization dedicated to peace and mutual prosperity. It was a cartel designed to maintain the power and wealth of the oldest spacefaring civilizations. Newer species were given membership and allowed to participate in galactic society, but they were systematically excluded from the most valuable resources. The Deathworld classification system was the key to the entire scheme. By labeling resource-rich worlds as too dangerous for colonization, the Council prevented younger species from claiming them. The established civilizations could then exploit these worlds in secret while maintaining the fiction that they were uninhabitable. Lisa discovered that Earth's solar system controlled access to a critical junction of hyperspace lanes that connected 4 different galactic arms. Whoever controlled that junction could regulate trade and military movement across a quarter of the galaxy. The Council had been planning to gradually relocate humanity to a less strategic location while claiming Earth's system for themselves. "We have enough evidence to expose the entire conspiracy," Jake said as dawn approached. "But we need to be careful about how we use it. If we confront them directly, they'll just deny everything and destroy the evidence." Lisa was already thinking ahead. "We need to document everything and get copies off the station before they realize what we've found. And we need allies." "Velen," said the Novians, have questions about the classification system. There might be other younger species who suspect the truth. Jake began copying files to encrypted storage devices while Lisa worked on a comprehensive report. They had uncovered one of the biggest conspiracies in galactic history, but exposing it would require more than just evidence. They needed a plan. That would force the Council to admit the truth and reform the entire system. As the station's artificial morning began, Lisa and Jake prepared for the most dangerous phase of their mission. The discovery was complete, and the investigation had revealed the scope of the deception. Now they had to decide how to use their knowledge without getting themselves killed in the process. That the truth about Deathworlds was bigger than either of them had imagined. But if they could expose it properly, humanity and dozens of other species would finally get the fair treatment they deserved in the galactic community. The Galactic Council chamber buzzed with quiet conversation as representatives from 47 different species took their seats. Lisa Park felt sweat beading on her forehead, despite the cool temperature maintained for the diverse alien physiologies. Today was supposed to be a routine progress report on humanity's integration into galactic society, but she and Jake Morrison had very different plans. Ambassador Vextar presided over the session from his elevated platform, his reptilian scales shifting between deep green and gold as he reviewed the day's agenda. Counselor Mira Lynn sat to his right, her completely black eyes scanning the chamber with an expression that might have been boredom or contempt. The chair recognizes Dr. Lisa Park and Captain Jake Morrison of Earth, Vextar announced. You may proceed with your quarterly integration report. Lisa stood on shaking legs and activated the central holographic display. Instead of the expected charts showing human adaptation to galactic protocols, the display showed a star map with dozens of systems marked in bright red. Honored counselors, Lisa began, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber's audio. System, we stand before you today not to report on our integration, but to present evidence of systematic deception that has corrupted the very foundation of this council. A ripple of shocked murmurs swept through the chamber. Several alien representatives leaned forward in their seats, while others began speaking rapidly to their aides. Ambassador Vextar's scales shifted to a dangerous shade of deep red. Dr. Park, he said sharply, you are here to discuss humanities progress, not to make wild accusations against this council. Jake stepped forward. With respect, Ambassador, the accusations are not wild, and we have documentation to support every claim we're about to make. Lisa manipulated the display to show survey data from the Vega 7 system. This world is classified as a Class 8 Deathworld due to lethal radiation levels. However, our analysis of the actual survey data shows radiation levels well within safe parameters for most galactic species. More importantly, this system contains the largest known deposits of trilithium crystals in the galaxy. The chamber erupted in chaos. Representatives from newer species began shouting questions, while the established civilization's delegates demanded order. Through it all, Lisa continued her presentation with the steady determination of a scientist presenting her research. The Rigel Deeps, classified as uninhabitable due to gravitational anomalies, shows no such anomalies in the real survey data. Instead, it sits at the intersection of 3 major hyperspace lanes, making it one of the most strategically valuable locations in the galaxy. Counselor Mira Lynn rose from her seat, her pale face now showing the first emotion Lisa had ever seen from her. This is preposterous, she declared. These humans have clearly misinterpreted technical data beyond their understanding. Their accusations are based on faulty analysis and paranoid speculation. Jake activated his tablet and connected it to the chamber's display system. Then perhaps you can explain these shipping manifests showing regular Zentari Empire cargo runs to the supposedly uninhabitable Vega 7 system, or these construction records for ethereal collective research stations on planets classified as too dangerous to approach. The evidence appeared on screens throughout the chamber. Detailed shipping logs, construction permits, resource extraction, reports, and communication records painted a clear picture of decades-long exploitation of so-called Deathworlds by the Council's most powerful members. Administrator Kellenox, who had been sitting quietly near the back of the chamber, suddenly stood up. Security, he called out. Arrest these humans for unauthorized access to classified materials and spreading dangerous misinformation. Armed security personnel began moving toward Lisa and Jake, but they were blocked by researcher Valahim and several other representatives from newer species. The floating Novian delegate pulsed with bright blue light as he spoke. Before any arrests are made, Perhaps the accused should be allowed to present their evidence in full. After all, transparency is supposed to be one of our founding principles. Lisa seized the moment. We have already transmitted copies of all our evidence to Earth's government and to the home worlds of 17 other species. The information is spreading through quantum communication networks as we speak. Arresting us will not stop the truth from reaching the galaxy. Ambassador Vextar's scales were now cycling rapidly through different colors, a sign of extreme agitation in his species. Even if these allegations were true, which they are not, the Deathworld classification system exists to protect newer species from dangers they cannot understand. The established civilizations have the experience and resources to safely exploit these challenging environments. Safely exploit? Jake's voice carried the hard edge of a military officer who had caught an enemy in a lie. You mean secretly exploit while denying other species access to resources that could transform their civilizations. The display now showed Earth's own classification report. Lisa read directly from the official document. Earth is classified as uninhabitable due to crushing gravity, toxic atmosphere, and extreme surface conditions. Yet 47 billion humans live there comfortably, and we've terraformed 3 other worlds in our system. She changed the display to show geological surveys of Earth's moon and asteroid belt. Our system contains enough quantum crystalline formations to supply galactic communication networks for 1,000 years. The hyperspace junction in our outer system could reduce travel time between galactic arms by 60%. Yet somehow, this information was never shared with us during first contact negotiations. The chamber had fallen into stunned silence. Even the security personnel had stopped advancing, unsure whether to proceed with arrests in the face of such overwhelming evidence. Counselor Merlin made one last desperate attempt to regain control. These humans have violated their diplomatic status by accessing classified information. Their evidence was obtained through illegal means and should be dismissed. The evidence may have been obtained through unauthorized access, said a new voice from the chamber's upper gallery, but the facts it reveals cannot be dismissed. All eyes turned to see who had spoken. In the gallery reserved for observers stood Ambassador Telcor of the Kandari Republic, flanked by representatives from the Novian Federation and 3 other younger civilizations. The Kandari Republic has been conducting its own investigation into Deathworld classifications, Telcor continued. Our findings match those presented by the human representatives. We have documented evidence of resource extraction from 17 supposedly uninhabitable worlds. Ambassador Vextara's composure finally cracked completely. You have no authority to conduct independent investigations of Council-classified worlds. Such actions violate the fundamental protocols that maintain galactic stability. Jake smiled grimly. Stability for whom, Ambassador? For the species that have been enriching themselves while keeping everyone else in the dark? Or for the dozens of civilizations that have been denied access to resources that could lift them out of poverty? The security chief, a massive insectoid creature named Zarathul, finally reached Lisa and Jake. But before he could act, 20 more representatives from younger species stood up in solidarity. The chamber was now clearly divided between the seen established powers and everyone else. Chief Zarathul, Lisa said calmly, you can arrest us if you want. But our evidence is already spreading across the galaxy. Independent survey teams are already en route to verify our claims. The truth is out, and no amount of intimidation will put it back in the bottle. Zarathul hesitated, his compound eyes reflecting the chaos in the chamber. As head of Council security, his job was to maintain order, but arresting the humans now would only confirm their allegations and make them martyrs to the cause. Ambassador Vextar seemed to realize the same thing. With his authority crumbling and his conspiracy exposed, he made a tactical retreat. This session is suspended pending a full investigation of these serious allegations. All representatives will return to their quarters while the council leadership reviews the evidence. But Lisa wasn't finished. Before this session ends, I want everyone here to know that Earth's government has already dispatched exploration vessels to 12 nearby Deathworlds. If our analysis is correct, those ships will find habitable worlds rich in resources. If we're wrong, they'll find the dangerous conditions described in your classifications. She paused and looked directly at Ambassador Vexstar. The first reports should arrive within 72 hours. At that point, every species in this chamber will know whether the Galactic Council has been telling the truth about Deathworlds, or whether they've been running the biggest resource grab in galactic history. The confrontation was over, but the real battle was just beginning. As the chamber slowly emptied, Lisa and Jake found themselves surrounded by representatives from younger species eager to learn more about their discoveries. The established powers retreated to private chambers to plan their response to the crisis. The truth about Deathworlds was now public knowledge, and there would be no going back to the old system of lies and exploitation. The galaxy was about to change forever, and 2 humans had struck the match that would light the fire of revolution. The communication center of Kepler Station had never been busier. For 18 hours straight, quantum messages had been pouring in from across the galaxy as the news of Lisa Park and Jake Morrison's revelations spread like wildfire through interstellar networks. The 2 humans sat in a secure conference room, watching the galactic community tear itself apart in real time. Earth Fleet Command reports that the first survey team has reached the Proxima Deathworld cluster. Jake announced, reading from his secure tablet. Initial scans confirm habitable atmospheres on 6 out of 8 planets. Gravity and temperature readings match our projections exactly. Lisa barely looked up from her own stream of incoming data. The Novian Federation just published their complete findings on 43 Deathworlds in their sector. Every single one is not only habitable, but rich in resources that their surveys were never allowed to detect. Through the reinforced windows of their conference room, they could see the chaos spreading throughout the station. Ships from younger civilizations were arriving hourly, their representatives demanding immediate access to the restricted databases. Meanwhile, vessels belonging to the established powers were departing just as quickly, their crews no doubt rushing home to manage the crisis. A soft chime indicated an incoming priority transmission. The holographic display activated to show Ambassador Telcor of the Kanduri Republic, his insectoid features drawn with exhaustion, but his compound eyes bright with determination. Dr. Park, Captain Morrison, he began without preamble. I bring greetings from the Coalition of Emerging Species. 27 civilizations have now joined our alliance, and we have elected you as our honorary co-leaders in this investigation. Jake leaned forward. What's the current situation, Ambassador? Complete chaos, and it's wonderful, Telcor replied, his translator somehow conveying his satisfaction. The Xanthari Empire has recalled all their ships from supposed Deathworlds, but our long-range sensors tracked them removing massive quantities of processed trilithium crystals before they withdrew. The Ethereal Collective's research stations are broadcasting automated distress signals, claiming they're studying dangerous phenomena when they're clearly operating mining and refining facilities. Lisa felt a surge of satisfaction mixed with anger. How are the established powers responding to the evidence? With increasing desperation, said a new voice, as researcher Velahan materialized in the hologram. Ambassador Vexstar has issued a statement claiming that the restricted information was classified for the protection of younger species. He insists that the established civilizations were merely conducting dangerous research that newer species lack the technology to safely perform. That might have worked a week ago, Jake replied grimly, but not now that everyone knows what they were really doing. The hologram expanded to include representatives from 6 other species. Lisa recognized delegates from the Aquarian communes, the Silicon-based collective, and several others she had only read about in anthropological reports. Each one had a similar story to tell. Commander Brix of the Aquarian communes spoke through a water-filled translation chamber. Our oceanographers have always questioned why water-rich worlds were classified as Deathworlds due to toxic aquatic environments. Our teams have now confirmed that these worlds contain the purest water sources in the galaxy, along with unique mineral formations that exist nowhere else. A silicon-based collective's representative, a crystalline being whose name translated roughly as harmonic resonance, pulsed with different colored lights as it communicated. Our mineral analysis experts have suspected for decades that many classified Deathworlds contain the exact crystalline matrices our species requires for reproduction and growth. The established powers have been denying us access to worlds essential for our survival. Each testimony added another layer to the massive conspiracy that Lisa and Jake had uncovered. It wasn't just about resources or strategic locations. The Deathworld classification system had been designed to prevent entire species from accessing the materials and environments they needed to thrive and expand. There's something else, Valahan added, his bioluminescent body dimming with what might have been sadness. We've discovered communication records showing that the established powers have been actively monitoring younger species to identify their specific needs and preferences. When they find worlds that would be perfect for a particular species, those worlds are immediately classified as Deathworlds to prevent that species from claiming them. The implications hit Lisa like a physical blow. They've been systematically stunting the development of every new species that joins the galactic community. Worse than that, Jake said, his military mind already working through the strategic implications. They've been ensuring that newer species remain dependent on the established powers for resources and technology. It's not just exploitation. It's a form of economic slavery. Ambassador Telcor's image shifted as he received an urgent message. I'm getting reports from across the galaxy. Independent survey teams have now confirmed that over 200 supposedly uninhabitable worlds are not only safe, but incredibly valuable. The evidence is overwhelming. The conference room's main display activated to show a galaxy-wide communication network. Messages were flooding in from civilizations Lisa had never heard of, species so new to galactic society that they barely had representation on the outer councils. Each one told the same story of suspicious Deathworld classifications in their home sectors and mysterious restrictions on exploration and expansion. Dr. Park, came a new voice through the communication system. The speaker was Dr. Elena Rodriguez, Earth's chief xenobiologist and Lisa's former mentor. I'm transmitting from the UES Discovery, currently in orbit around what was classified as the scorched wasteland of Arcturus Prime. I'm looking at a garden world with perfect atmospheric conditions and signs of advanced mineral formations beneath the surface. Lisa felt tears forming in her eyes. Elena had been studying alien worlds her entire career, always wondering why humanity seemed to be the only species capable of surviving on challenging planets. Now she knew the truth. Humans weren't uniquely adaptable. They had just been willing to live on worlds that others claimed were too dangerous. Jake was monitoring military communications from Earth Fleet Command. 12 survey teams have now reported their findings. Every single Deathworld they've investigated is not only habitable, but strategically valuable. Our people are finding worlds that could support billions of colonists and provide resources for centuries of expansion. The established powers are beginning to crack, Valahan reported. Internal communications we've intercepted show arguments breaking out between the Xanthari Empire and the Ethereal Collective. Each side is blaming the other for allowing the conspiracy to be exposed. Ambassador Telcor's expression grew grim. There are also reports of military buildups in several established territories. I fear they may attempt to use force to maintain their control over the disputed worlds. Lisa stood up and moved to the window, looking out at the docking bays, where ships from dozens of different species were gathering. Some carried survey equipment for investigating newly accessible worlds. Others were clearly military vessels preparing for potential conflict. "How many species are we talking about?" she asked. "How many civilizations have been affected by this conspiracy?" Commander Brix's aquatic form shimmered as he consulted his records. "Our preliminary analysis suggests that over 300 species have been denied access to worlds suitable for their specific biological needs. The conspiracy has been operating for at least 2 centuries, possibly longer." The scope of the deception was staggering. Lisa realized they had uncovered more than just resource theft. They had exposed a systematic effort to control the development and expansion of galactic civilization itself. The established powers hadn't just been getting rich. They had been shaping the entire structure of interstellar society to maintain their dominance. "There's something else," Jake said quietly. "Intelligence reports suggest that some of the established powers have been in contact with each other, coordinating their responses to this crisis. We may be looking at a formal alliance between species that have previously been competitors." The revelation sent a chill through the room. If the conspiracy included formal cooperation between the galaxy's most powerful civilizations, exposing them might trigger the largest interstellar conflict in galactic history. But Lisa felt more determined than ever. Looking at the faces of her new allies, beings from dozens of different worlds who had been systematically deceived and exploited, she knew there was no turning back. "Then we make sure the truth reaches every species in the galaxy," she said firmly. "We document everything, share it with everyone, and let the galactic community decide what kind of civilization they want to build." The revelation phase was complete. The conspiracy was exposed, the evidence was overwhelming, and the galaxy would never be the same. But the hardest part still lay ahead, transforming revelation into lasting change while avoiding the war that the established powers might start to protect their secrets. 1 year later, Lisa Parks stood on the observation deck of the UES Liberty, humanity's new flagship, watching the most remarkable sight in galactic history. Below them, the first mixed-species colonization fleet was preparing to depart for worlds that had been forbidden for centuries. Ships from 47 different civilizations floated in perfect formation, their crews working together to begin the largest expansion of galactic civilization in recorded history. Jake Morrison joined her at the viewport, wearing the uniform of the new Galactic Cooperative's Joint Defense Force. The past 12 months had transformed him from a simple military attached into one of the most influential leaders in the galaxy. His weathered face showed the strain of the battles they had fought, but his eyes sparkled with satisfaction as he watched the fleet below. "Final count is 312 worlds confirmed as habitable and resource-rich," he reported. "The old Galactic Council classified every single one of them as uninhabitable Deathworlds. We're looking at the greatest expansion of livable space in galactic history." Lisa nodded, but her thoughts were on the cost of their victory. The revelation of the Deathworld conspiracy had triggered the largest political crisis the galaxy had ever seen. Ambassador Vextar and 17 other senior council members had been arrested and charged with crimes against galactic development. The trials had lasted 8 months and revealed corruption that reached back over 3 centuries. "Any word from the Xanthari Empire?" she asked. Jake's expression darkened. "Emperor Krextil finally agreed to the settlement terms this morning. They're turning over all mining operations on 46 Deathworlds and paying reparations to the species they defrauded. The Ethereal Collective signed their agreement yesterday. The collapse of the old power structure had not been peaceful. Several established civilizations had initially tried to use military force to maintain control over their secret mining operations. The Xanthari Empire had actually attacked 3 survey teams before the coalition of emerging species could organize a defense. That was when Jake had truly come into his own. Using his military background and the desperate cooperation of dozens of younger species, he had created the Joint Defense Force almost overnight. The combined fleets of 40 species had been no match for individual established powers, but together they had overwhelming strength. The war had lasted only 6 weeks, but it had changed everything. For the first time in galactic history, the younger species had proven they could stand up to the established powers and win. The old order based on ancient privilege and secret exploitation had crumbled almost overnight. Dr. Park, came a familiar voice from behind them. They turned to see researcher Velahan floating toward them, his bioluminescent body pulsing with the warm golden light that indicated contentment in his species. The first Resource Assessment Committee meeting begins in an hour, he reminded her. As the committee's director, you should probably review the agenda one more time. Lisa smiled at her old ally. Velahan had been appointed as her deputy in the new organization, tasked with properly surveying and classifying all the worlds that had been mislabeled as Deathworlds. It was the most important scientific project in galactic history, and Lisa sometimes felt overwhelmed by the responsibility. The Resource Assessment Committee had already made remarkable discoveries. The Vega 7 system alone contained enough trilithium crystals to supply faster-than-light communication for the entire galaxy for 1,000 years. The Rigel Deeps had become the new center of galactic trade, with merchant vessels from hundreds of species using its hyperspace junction to cut travel time by 70%. But more important than the resources were the worlds suitable for colonization. Species that had been crowded onto single planets for centuries now had access to dozens of worlds perfectly suited to their needs. The Silicon-based collective had found 7 worlds with the crystal formations necessary for their reproduction. The Aquarian communes had claimed 12 ocean worlds that would support billions of their people. Any problems with the colonial assignments? Jake asked Velahan. Surprisingly few, the Novian replied. When species can choose from hundreds of available worlds instead of fighting over a handful, territorial disputes become much less common. The new selection system is working better than anyone expected. Lisa had designed the new system herself, based on careful analysis of each species' biological and cultural needs. Instead of the old first-come, first-served approach, worlds were assigned based on compatibility and sustainability. Species received priority for worlds that matched their specific requirements, ensuring that everyone could find suitable homes. The 3 of them made their way through the Liberty's corridors toward the conference center. The ship itself was a symbol of the new galactic order, built with technology and materials contributed by 30 different species. Human engineering had provided the basic design, but Xanthari crystalline computing systems, ethereal energy matrices, and Novian biotechnology had made it the most advanced vessel ever constructed. The conference center was already filled with representatives from across the galaxy. Lisa saw familiar faces from the original coalition of emerging species, but there were also delegates from established civilizations that had accepted the new order. Not all of the older species had been part of the conspiracy, and many had been just as shocked as everyone else to learn about the Deathworld deception. Administrator Kellenox was there, representing the reformed Galactic Council. The tall, blue-skinned alien had survived the political purge by cooperating fully with the investigation and helping to expose the full extent of the conspiracy. His forearms gestured nervously as he reviewed reports on his tablet. Dr. Park, he said as she approached, I have the final reparation calculations. The established powers have agreed to transfer ownership of 238 former Deathworlds to their rightful claimants. The total value of resources and territory being redistributed exceeds 40 trillion galactic credits. Lisa whistled softly. It was more wealth than some entire civilizations possessed, and it was being given to species that had been systematically impoverished by the old system. What about the monitoring stations? Jake asked. Are they established? Powers cooperating with the oversight requirements? Kalinox nodded. All former secret installations have been converted to transparent research facilities operated by the cooperative. We now have real-time monitoring of resource extraction and environmental protection on every world. No species can exploit these planets in secret ever again. The meeting began with reports from survey teams across the galaxy. Each team had a similar story to tell. Worlds that had been classified as uninhabitable were actually perfect for colonization and rich in resources. The old Galactic Council's classification system had been wrong about almost everything. But Lisa's favorite report came from Dr. Elena Rodriguez, still commanding the UES Discovery as it explored formerly forbidden worlds. Elena's weathered face appeared on the main display, transmitted from orbit around a planet that had been classified as a toxic wasteland. New Geneva is everything we hoped it would be, Elena reported. Perfect gravity, clean atmosphere, and enough arable land to support 50 million colonists. The first settlement ships arrive next week, and we expect to have a thriving colony within 2 years. Jake leaned over to whisper in Lisa's ear. Remember when we thought Earth was unique, because humans could survive on a death world? Now we know that most death worlds are actually paradise planets that were stolen from their rightful inhabitants. The meeting continued for 4 hours, with each report adding to the picture of transformation sweeping across the galaxy. Species that had been confined to crowded homeworlds were spreading across dozens of new planets. Resources that had been hoarded by a few civilizations were now being shared fairly among all galactic citizens. But the most important change was political. The old Galactic Council, dominated by ancient species and secret agreements, had been replaced by the new Galactic Cooperative. Every species had an equal voice, regardless of age or power, and all decisions were made transparently, with full access to information. As the meeting ended, Lisa found herself alone with Jake on the Liberty's observation deck once again. The colonization fleet had departed while they were in conference, leaving behind only the normal traffic of interstellar commerce and diplomacy. Do you think it will last? Jake asked quietly. This new system we've built? Lisa considered the question carefully. The transformation of galactic civilization had been remarkably swift, but lasting change would require constant vigilance. There would always be species tempted to exploit others, and the abundance of newly available resources might create new forms of conflict. It will last as long as we remember why we fought for it, she said finally. The moment we forget that every species deserves access to the resources they need to thrive, we'll start building the same kind of system we just tore down. Jake nodded and pulled up a status report on his tablet. Earth's colonial expansion is ahead of schedule. We'll have settlements on 23 new worlds by the end of the year. The resource wealth is transforming human civilization faster than anyone expected.